Hey, everybody. It's the Athletic Hockey Show. Welcome in. We're doing a live show straight after the Olympic matches today on YouTube. Post-game reaction from the United States and Latvia. Canada played earlier today. It's been an awesome day of day two of the men's tournament in Milan. I'm Jesse Granger coming to you from Las Vegas. This afternoon, we're going to be joined by two-time US Olympian, 2010 silver medalist, David Backes. He'll be coming up in a minute or two, but first, Dom Luszczyszyn joins me from Toronto. He's been watching the hockey over there. How's it going, Dom?
It is going great. It was a great day of hockey for both of us in Toronto and in Las Vegas. You said afternoon. It is evening here on the East Coast. But yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah, you didn't have to get up as early as I did for the early games, so it's not evening for me now. But the time zone worked in your favor a few hours ago. I'm already dreading the 3 a.m. games we've got coming up. Going to be brutal. But like you said, some good hockey today. They were blowouts. The final scores do not indicate that there was good hockey, but if you watch the games, they were fun. First, we saw Switzerland shut out France 4-0 earlier. Canada blanked Czechia 5-0. The U.S. Struggled at first, but ended up putting it together and winning 5-1. And then on the other game, simultaneously, we had Germany coming out on top. Just what's your overall takeaway from these games right off the bat?
It went exactly as expected. I think I expected maybe Czechia to put up a little bit of a better fight, and Canada just was completely dominant. A game where they I don't think even they had their best stuff yet, but as the game went along, especially in the third period, they started really rolling, and Czechia couldn't really generate anything. With the U.S. team, I was genuinely worried in the first half, and then Brady Tkachuk laid that hit. And I think the entire game changed after that. You hear a lot about like momentum shifts from a big hit, and I don't think I've ever seen it in like that at that level, where immediately after they looked like the Harlem Globetrotters.
The one goal specifically, it ended up on Nelson's stick, was actually Harlem Globetrotters. Like they had the uniform colors matched the Globetrotters. They're passing it around. They didn't know who wanted to take the goal at the end. It was pretty spectacular. Let's bring in David Backes, 15-year NHL career, two-time Olympian. He won the silver for the U.S. in Vancouver in 2010. Thanks so much for joining us, David.
Thanks for having me, man.
What stood out to you about the hockey this morning? Obviously, we saw Canada take care of business, like Dom mentioned, made it look easy, maybe even not at their best, against a team that I picked to win the bronze. I think this is a really good team, and Canada made them look not so good this morning. What was your takeaway from that game?
Yeah, Canadians were dominant, not unexpected. And then the U.S. had a little bit more adversity. I'd say more from, challenges, the offsides, and then the goalie interference. Kind of you wonder what's cooking when two goals get called back. When's the last time you saw a game with two consecutive goals in the first period get called back against a team that then scores after the first challenge? But they were resilient. They got a lot of their guys going. The defense with Quinn Hughes and Zach Werenski, I mean, it's electric to watch those guys move around, drive the offense. The power play is snapping around. I think Austin Matthews, even though it's the fifth goal in a 5-1 win, for him to score, get that touch, he needs to be a big-time producer for the U.S. To have success. He's a big horse. He's the captain, and it's a big moment for him. And he's I think underrated how big he is as a human and how forceful he could be if he just gets determined and says, nobody's stopping me. And I hope that's the mentality he gets as this tournament goes on.
You mentioned how good the blue line looks. To me, that's like we're going to draw so many comparisons to Four Nations just because that's the most recent and really the only recent example we have of best on best. To me, the blue line, Quinn Hughes, man, he makes a big difference. He's doing it in Minnesota. That team looks totally different with him on the ice. And I think that the blue line is where I look at it when I say, okay, where is this U.S. team better? That's kind of what stands out. What about you?
Yeah, I think they need to have better defense and better goaltending. And then, that game for me, playing Latvia in World Championships, Latvia is not a slouch. I mean, they might have 6 NHLers or so on the team, and you go into there saying, we're going to win this game. But those guys work their absolute tails off. They don't shy away from any physicality. And I feel like and some of them are so motivated because truthfully, it's the biggest stage they've ever played on. Opportunities to get NHL contracts, perhaps. A lot of people watching them, and they're playing it like it's Stanley Cup finals, while the U.S. team's assuming that they're going to win, but still a lot of work to be done. And I think that's what you saw a little bit in the first period. It was a little cute throughout with one more pass, rather than taking the shot, maybe finding a rebound, and then getting to the hard areas. I think that's something where the U.S. needs to, there's certainly a couple guys that are already there with the Tkachuks, and JT Miller's not scared of confrontation and going to the hard areas, but the skills got to get into those hard areas in order to score as this tournament goes on and the competition gets better.
Yeah, that is something I noticed immediately, and that's why I was a little worried in the first half, to the point that I went and checked how many slot shots the USA had halfway through the game, and they were out shooting the Latvians at a certain point, like 2011, but the slot shots were 6-4 Latvia. That hit happens from Tkachuk. They wake up, and I think they finished the game like 30-8. They completely dominated after they got more looks inside. They were very tentative and tepid early on, but that is definitely something that's going to be a key throughout this tournament, where you looked at Canada's game against Czechia, almost every single shot that they were able to get was in the dirty area.
And I think that mentality is going to be the difference maker between a gold medal and not living up to expectations for them, is saying, you know what, I do have maybe a third of an NHL season left when I get back, but none of that matters. I need to lay it all on the line. And if that's getting punched in the face after a whistle, standing on top of a goaltender, the Tkachuks only get better when that happens to them. But is Austin Matthews going to say, I'm willing to do that? I'm going to go stand in front and take whatever abuse I need to jam one home? Or is he going to shy away and stay on the perimeter? Jack Eichel, and these guys are all shown that they're willing to do it at times, but consistency and doing it on a regular basis and doing it every shift so that their team can win, that's the difference maker to me. I think they're going to have the best goaltending and the best defense perhaps in the tournament from a defensive standpoint, and now that's a huge factor in what I'm looking for the rest of the tournament.
To both your points, it felt like the line that played the most direct hockey was that fourth line. And I'm not going to lie, when the line combinations came out and I saw JT Miller, Brock Nelson, and Jack Hughes on a line, I'm sitting there thinking, like, what is this line supposed to be? I have no idea what's going on. And then they get on the ice and they're just immediately great. They were the best line in the game, I thought. And maybe it is to what you guys are saying. Maybe it's just playing more direct hockey, not trying to make that extra pass. I mean, they did make some beautiful passes, but that line was just absolutely dominant today.
Yeah, there's a lot that works with that line, and Jack Hughes had the puck a lot. If you added 2 to his number, I would have sworn it was Patrick Kane out there. The way he controlled the puck, he's so shifty, sees the ice, he makes plays, and just drives the line's offense. Brock Nelson, obviously, with 3, 1 disallowed, but he had an awesome start to the tournament where I feel like he's just going to feel it from here on in. And JT Miller does a ton of the dirty work that's not necessarily on the score sheet, but a guy that, knows what it takes to get to, deep in playoff runs and such, being with Tampa. And he knows what it takes to say, whether he scores a goal in this tournament or not, he's a guy that's going to be a big factor with some of the intangibles.
I like Jack Hughes a lot today, and it feels like an interesting question. Like that fourth line was so good. Do you keep it together? Or was Jack Hughes so awesome that maybe you shift him up into the top 9 now after I think he answered some of the worries after the Four Nations?
I don't think you mess with it after tonight. I think you got to get to you probably have, and my guess is Sullivan's got a couple combinations on his scorecard. I know Ken Hitchcock always had 3 sets of lines. He had tie game, up by a goal, down by a goal. That's what I got on my lineup card, and I'm sure that exists in the U.S. coaching staff. But for now, it was a good start. You see who's feeling it. My question is there a time when you mix in 13th forward, 14th forward, the 8th D, guys that are not playing yet, because you want everyone to get a little taste, and my guess is that they do that in the next 2 games. not because anyone played poorly today, but just because if someone gets hurt or down the stretch, it comes to the gold medal game and somebody can't go for whatever reason, they might have their arm blown off if you're not going to play in the gold medal game. But that could be an opportunity to say, well, everyone's got a taste, and this guy's just going to be inserted and not have jitters of his first Olympic appearance or anything like that. And they've got Denmark and Germany, I believe, coming up where they can probably afford to shift guys in and out, not disrupt anything in the lineup, and forge forward.
We were talking about this before we jumped on about just the different roles that these guys, especially with the additional roster, you've got guys who are not playing very many minutes, like they're barely getting shifts, and these are guys who are used to playing every shift for their NHL team. You've been through that. You've been through Olympic tournaments where maybe your role's not the same as you're used to. How quickly can guys adjust to that, and how much of a challenge is that to not be on the ice as much as you're used to and still be able to find your game?
Yeah, the lack of ice time, I think, is the most difficult thing, because rather than being in a groove and being out there every third time, now you're a fourth liner and you're going to play maybe 8 minutes or 10 minutes because the international game, your top line doesn't need to play 20 plus minutes because everyone's so good that you can spread it out a little bit more. But when you're, playing 3 or 4 shifts a period, that's a tough thing to just have your motor going at all times, other than the stage where you're so excited and so honored that you're finding ways to keep the motor revving on the bench, or jumping up and down, or skating during the TV timeouts to just keep your legs going. So that's different. But role wise, I feel like everyone's so versed, like Vinny Trocheck, that plays bigger minutes, but in this, he's certainly capable of killing penalties, winning faceoffs, and he's had to play that role at certain times, and he's going to be able to do that for USA in this tournament for sure.
I think one of the other challenges also, and maybe we saw this early on with USA, is in a tournament like this, everyone always talks about finding chemistry and gelling early, and the two brother combos being so good off the bat, I think speaks to that. What was your experience like in 2010, finding that chemistry, and how difficult was that?
Well, furthermore, in international play, NHL play, you get 20 on the bench. In international play, 22. So typically you have 13 forwards and 7 D, and I think that's tough for the coaching staff, and it's certainly tough for the players. But I was on the fourth line in 2010 with 4 guys. So it was myself, Ryan Callahan, Chris Drury, and Bobby Ryan. And so not only are you looking for chemistry with guys you never played with, but now the line looks different almost every time you go out there. Is it a face-off on the left-hand side? Well, Drury was really good at winning face-offs on his forehand, so he would go, or I would go on the wing, and Bobby Ryan would have to sit. And it was just I don't know how they figured it out, but we were able to just, between the 4 of us, look at each other and say, we're probably not going to get a ton of minutes. And that means when we're out there, we got to be impactful. We got to go 1,000,000 miles an hour, and we got to make our stamp on this game in every second that we get on the ice. And I feel like we did a pretty good job of that as a unit, and we're able to, score quite a few goals, in my opinion, for a fourth line at integral parts of games, especially at the beginnings of them, to get everyone going and to, start us in the right direction.
Before we let you go, I want to shift a little bit to off the ice. We saw, and it's kind of quieted down now that we actually have hockey to break down, but before, it was such a big story, the way the two different approaches the US and Canadian teams are taking to this. The US are kind of embracing the dorm mentality, living in the Olympic Village. Canada prefers to have more of what it's used to in the hotels. You went through 2 Olympics. How do you compare the 2 experiences, and what are these guys going through living in the Olympic Village and dealing with all of that on top of the hockey?
Well, I feel like this was way more thought out, because when we got to both Olympics, I think we got there, had 1 practice, and we were into games already. It seems like a couple of the guys made it for opening ceremony, so they've been there for 5 or 6 days, able to get a couple more practices in. You see the Kachuk brothers getting a picture with Snoop Dogg. I love that they're embracing that Olympic spirit, and they're just totally living in the moment and enjoying themselves. For me, there's an aura around the village that's just special. You're at the cafeteria, you're seeing other athletes that have just competed or that are famous in their own right, and you're getting to say hi and getting to meet a bunch of people. Vancouver was unique in that it's such an accessible city. It's North America. It's really safe. And we were in the village, but we played almost every game was a 12-15 game for USA. So we'd wake up, play the game. Now you got the rest of the day with nothing, on your schedule. You're able to go walk around with your family. You can go see some of the cool stuff in Vancouver, go take in other Olympic events, knowing that the next day you likely have a practice, and then you're dialed in after the practice for probably a team dinner that night. And then we're up early getting ready for that 12-15 game the next day. And it was a great rhythm for us, but we got to really enjoy the whole city of Vancouver and the Olympic atmosphere all around there. Still spent plenty of time in the village, but it was more accessible, and there felt like more stuff to do around. In Sochi, it was a tense time between the U.S. and Russia, between the world and Russia, which that hasn't changed a ton in recent history. But we were very warned against leaving, secure areas, which was the village, the athletic stadiums where events were being hosted, and then where our parents were being hosted was secure as well. So kind of between the two of them on buses, and it felt more of like a confined type of, I don't want to say caged, but you were very confined and restricted on where you could go. So it was village out to these there's also some accessible safe areas where like Procter & Gamble would host a Team USA house, and you could go there and get food and see other athletes and watch big screen TVs and just be comfortable and lounge. USA Hockey would have their space. The Players Association had their space. So between those areas, you tried to just embrace it, do what you needed to do athletically, obviously first to prepare for the next event and soak in that aura. I wasn't actually aware that Canada was staying in hotels, not in the village, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they did a couple days there just to see what it was like. And then they're like, let's go to the hotels that we're used to staying at. All
right. Well, I don't know if they're used to staying at any Italian hotels, but maybe they are.
Fair enough. What's your,
we'll see. It's one of those unique experiences that I wouldn't have changed staying in the village and, for any hotel, to tell you the truth, because it's such an awesome experience that's just not replicated anywhere.
What's your favorite non-hockey Winter Olympic sport, whether it's something you got to see when you were in Vancouver or just something you like watching on TV these days?
I went to ski jumping in Vancouver and Whistler. That was the only other event I got to. Hockey being, we landed again, one practice straight into the games. And then the gold medal game was the last event of the Olympics that year, right over to the closing ceremonies after that. So I only got to go up there for a brief stint to see some ski jumping, but I'm captivated by some of the figure skating. The team competition was awesome to watch this year. Then the speed skating, the ice events really get me, and so do the downhill skiing, because when you get some of those drone shots from the rear view of these athletes, you start to see the steepness of the mountain, and it's certainly not like anything I've ever been on. It's probably I'd be shaking my knees at the top and wouldn't want to go down with how steep these hills are. And then you see they're going 80, 90 miles an hour, turning as hard as they can. Like that gives you a real respect. And I've heard a couple of my buddies saying that they should have like average high school athlete do it alongside of these Olympians, just so you can see how spectacular they are. And the couch potato who's yelling at the American who finishes 8th in the cross country, the 15-kilometer skiing event would be like, oh, maybe they are still a special athlete, even though they're 8th because the Norwegians are out of this world or whatever it is. So I'm really captivated by all of it. I see the skill and the time that's put in, and love the storylines that are being told, and also the seeing some of the heartbreak when some of these people finish 4th or get DQ'd or don't get to finish their disciplines, because the next chance is 4 years from now at the earliest, if that ever comes again. And this is once in a lifetime for a lot of these people.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us, David. Really appreciate it. We'll let you go. Enjoy the rest of the games, and you're welcome to come back and join us anytime.
I appreciate you guys. There'll be hopefully a US Canada final, and I'm only gonna bust out the closing ceremonies Ralph Lauren gear if that happens, and I'll wear it all around town that day if that happens. So we'll see.
Amazing. Thanks, David.
Cheers.
The one thing he said that I totally agree with is the drone shots completely change the way you view. I've been watching these events my whole life, like the same exact events. You see the one drone shot with the drone following the guy, and it's like, this is infinitely more dangerous than I had pictured in my head prior to seeing that view.
Yeah, I had no idea it was like that wild. I feel like every Olympics they add like some new angle, some new technology that like changes the game and shows you exactly how crazy it all is. And the drone, I think, might be one of the most memorable ones with how unreal downhill skiing looks from like that close.
I will say the humming of the drone is so annoying, but it's worth it for the shots that we get. First like 20 minutes, I'm like, what is that noise? And then I finally realized it's the humming of the drone engine. All right, let's get back to some hockey. The game that I don't know how much of it you got to watch. Obviously, it's going on at the same time as the USA. I had the double TVs going, Germany and Denmark. I thought Denmark was if you just totality, who's controlling the game, who's controlling possession. I thought Denmark was the better team. The difference ends up being, and not surprising, Germany has two superstars, and they don't need a bunch of chances. They only need a couple, and they had a couple, and they made them all count. Draisaitl scores 23 seconds in. Stützle scores a couple. That Germany team is fun. They don't have many pieces, but the pieces they've got are not only are they good, but they seem to be in good form right now.
Yeah, they're a sleeper team. I think they're a genuine medal dark horse. If they get second in Group C, they either get a bye or they get France or Italy in the play-in. If Slovakia keeps doing its thing, there's a chance they play Slovakia in the quarterfinal. Germany has a path, and they have those two superstars. And I know you can speak to Grubauer's return to form this year as well, where he's been unreal. You have a trifecta of guys who I think can get Germany to their best ever in the NHL era, obviously, at the Olympics. And Draisaitl, amazing. I didn't get to watch a lot of that game. I had both of them on the screen at the same time, but I was more dialed in on the US team. But I've liked Germany's chances from the get-go. I think a lot of their non-NHL guys are pretty strong defensively, where it'll be a bit tougher to get chances to score on this team. And if you have Seider leading the way and then Draisaitl and Stützle and Peterka as weapons up front, they can make some noise.
Yeah, Grubauer, man, what a story. It's kind of in the corner in Seattle, so it's not like front of everyone's like mind, but the guy had fallen off a cliff. Like, he gets that Vezina finalist year for Colorado. Seattle gives him the bag, and he's been like, there's no other way to put it. He's been the worst goalie in the entire NHL for basically 3 straight seasons. Like, his statistics have been like almost unbelievably bad for the Kraken. And then Joey Decord comes in and he's so good, it makes the perception of Grubauer even worse. At his age, after that many years of struggling, I think most people probably assumed his days of being a like high-end goalie are past him. And all of a sudden he's been great for Seattle this year. He looks so much more patient. Like, I felt like over the last few years, he just looked like he was guessing on a lot of plays, and he just looks like he's not trying to jump the play. He's just kind of reading the play, letting it happen, and then reacting. And he's always had like he has a great glove hand. He's got great reaction time. To me, it just looks like he's a little more patient. And then he goes into this game, and like I said, Denmark they had the advantage in possession. They had more shots. I didn't think Grubauer had to make any like grade A 10-bell saves, but he made the saves easy. Like, he didn't create a bunch of rebounds in front of him. He took care of all the shots and made it look easy back there. Like you said, they've got the pieces. If Grubauer is good, that team's dangerous. And so far he has been good. He hasn't given us a reason recently to believe that he's not going to continue doing this. So great form for that team. All right, next up, let's see. Do you want to talk more US or do you want to talk Canada right now?
Might as well talk Canada. I feel like we've been a very US heavy podcast right now, and it would be a disservice to my country if I didn't speak about Canada a little bit.
Let's talk about that team. They had a power play goal where Cale Makar passed it to Connor McDavid, who then passed it to Sidney Crosby, who then passed it to Nathan McKinnon, who scored. And by the way, the other guy on the ice who didn't touch the puck, it was Sam Reinhart, who has more power play goals than any player in the NHL over the last 3 seasons. What in the heck are you supposed to do to defend this team? It seems impossible. It's unreal the amount of talent they can put on the ice at once.
I think not taking penalties is a big one, and Czechia did that fairly well. I thought they played a pretty clean game. There was definitely a missed call on McKinnon cross-checking. I forget who it was, just right in the ribs. But yeah, the main thing is just don't. But then you run the risk of letting them dominate you at 5-on-5. So it's a tough balance to strike, especially with the blended NHL IHF rules. But I wonder what's going through Reinhardt's head during that power play, where he just has a front row seat to some of the greatest Canadian talent of all time just doing their thing. Like, he's probably just like, that was sick. Great to be a part of it. That was special. That power play unit makes me excited to watch power plays. Like, I'm fiending for them. I want more. I want to see them really just get a lot of power plays and just work the puck around the way they were.
Yeah, that win was so impressive. The US, like we mentioned, they kind of struggled early, and it was also not the same caliber of opponent. I think you said the same. We both picked Czechia to win bronze. I think they're right there with Sweden, if not better than Sweden and Finland. And for Canada to handle them, like, we've seen a lot of blowouts, but to me, this one's different because they handled a team that I think is going to do really well in this tournament. It just different level of competition, and yet they still probably look the most impressive of any team in the tournament so far.
Yeah, and I like I said, I don't think this is their final form. I was impressed by Jordan Binnington. I thought it was great and relieving to see him get a shutout and play well. I was a little concerned about his rebound control because I think that's where Czechia did get a lot of their chances, but he didn't let any softies. He was pretty composed. There were some erratic moments, but you got to expect that a little with Binnington. And if that's the guy they're getting, then I'm fine. I feel good. I feel confident, and it helps that the defense in front is so strong that they just don't let a lot of chances through anyway.
Right. And you mentioned the rebound control, and that's where I was going to go with Binnington, because I agree that it was encouraging, but I also saw a lot of the same things that I've seen in St. Louis this year. I wrote about Binnington going into this tournament and his form, and to me, I watched his last 5 games, and what stood out is I think because he's not playing particularly well, the puck's not hitting him. He's playing more aggressive. And like, Binnington's he doesn't play on his goal line normally. He's a pretty aggressive goalie, but I think he's been playing even more aggressive, an extra 6 inches outside of his crease than he normally would, just hoping to the puck. If the closer I can get to the puck, the more likely it is to hit me. I think that's kind of his mechanism for trying to work his way out of the slump is by playing more aggressive. And what that's leading to behind St. Louis is he's making the initial save, but the further out you go, the worse position you're going to be in for a rebound attempt. And St. Louis has allowed, I think, the 7th fewest rebounds of any team in the league, and yet they've allowed the 3rd most goals on rebounds of any team in the league. And to me, that is a product of Binnington playing more aggressively further out. And we saw a lot of that in the game today against Czechia. The difference is every one of those rebounds, he's got a superstar defenseman boxing out and taking care of it. Now, when it gets to the game that matters and it's the Kachucks around him, are they going to be able to clean up those rebounds as good? So, like, I guess my overall thoughts are, it's an encouraging start for Binnington, but it doesn't completely wash away the worries, because I specifically saw the things that are worrying me about his game still showed up even in a shutout. Yeah.
I am still hoping they go with Thompson. It might be hard to convince after Binnington gets a shutout, but there are some yellow flags perhaps, and they're red flags in St. Louis, but behind Canada's defense, I would go yellow. And as long as the defense is playing well in front, I think they'll be okay. One thing I noticed as I wrote about Binnington, how afraid I was of him starting, is he was in net for Canada against Denmark. That was a pretty stacked World Championship team, and the game-winning goal was, I think, a very poor Binnington rebound, and he was on his goal line, but he just puts it right in front of the net. That I know a lot of people like to bring up the Four Nations as him being this big game goalie, and he definitely delivered. But there's other instances since that have, I think, put that into question. And if you bring it together, his rebound control, there are still a lot of things unanswered, but it was overall, it's hard not to be encouraged by the shutout.
Right. Shutout in the Olympics. And it was like we said, it's against a legitimate opponent. It's not like they just crushed some team that had no chance. Like Czechia's got NHL guys. I will say my optimism on Czechia after watching them play, and I know it's against Canada, so everybody's going to look bad, but the depth is more concerning than I thought. Like the top line is dangerous when they're out there. When the top line's not out there, there's not a lot going on. We'll see what they look like against human opponents, but against the superhuman Canadian team, the depth is more concerning than I thought. We were mentioning some goalies. I just wanted to give a shout out to two of this is kind of an Olympic storyline that we see pretty much every time this comes around, even with the NHLers. We saw Damian Clara put up an awesome game before getting hurt. Hopefully it's not too bad for him. For Italy, he was absolutely spectacular. That's the most I've gotten to watch of him. I know about him. I know he was a second round pick for Anaheim. I know they think very highly of him. He's a monster of a human, and man, he moves well for how big he is. If you're a Ducks fan, you've got Lukas Dostal, who is, to me, I'm probably higher on Dostal than anyone, but maybe his parents. I think he's a top 5 goalie in the league. And like I'm driving the Dostal bandwagon. I think he's top 5 goalie. I think he's going to win a couple Vezinas in his career. And then you've got Clara sitting like coming in the wings. That they know what they're doing in Anaheim with the goalie scouting.
Yeah, for sure. That was one of the funnest blowouts I've ever seen in my life. It was just a complete onslaught of Swedish offense. And it didn't matter because Clara was there. And it wasn't like the Italians were defending well and keeping it to the outside like Slovakia was to an extent against Finland. Like these were grade AAA chances. And he was there, and it was amazing to see.
All right, let's wrap up today's show with our own version of the shootout, since it is the Olympics, and we're not to the gold medal game yet, so we haven't gotten rid of the shootout yet. We're going to do 3 questions, quick fire for Dom, and we'll start with kind of a bit of a downer. We'll get this one out of the way. Josh Morrissey, the only negative really to take for Canada of that game, leaves the game, doesn't return. What does that mean for their blue line? Obviously, they're stacked, but hurting him or losing him is obviously going to hurt.
I would have been a lot more worried if I didn't see Thomas Harley be awesome again in his Olympic debut. He was incredible. He looked like his Four Nations self. He looked like his last year's version. And I think him being able to step up into that role, they still have Shea Theodore. Compared directly to the US, I think there's a hole behind Cale Makar where they have Quinn Hughes and Zach Werenski. But the way Harley played is encouraging. Obviously, you want Josh Morrissey, but I think Canada has the guys to maybe handle the injury.
All right, next up, we've seen a game from everyone. You obviously had your predetermined notions going into this tournament. Is there anything that stands out in terms of like what has changed your opinion the most? We saw Finland lose a game that was a shocker. We saw Sweden struggle maybe more than we expected. We saw Czechia get handled by Canada, at least better than I expected them to. Is there anything after one round of games that you suddenly feel differently than you did before this thing started?
I am worried about Finland. They have a reputation for being a team that is pesky, that plays above its means, that is better than the sum of its parts. And now that they have talent and they are a favorite, it seems like they don't really know how to handle that. I did not like the way they really played against Slovakia. I didn't really like the way the coach used his best players. I think having Rantanen 8th in minutes is a baffling decision. I don't care if he doesn't look that great during the game. That is your star. Like, you should lean on him in a game where you're trailing for most of the game. And I definitely thought that with the reputation of being better than the sum of their parts, everything would come together and they would be a really tough out. But if they're going to be doing that, and if UC Saros keeps looking like he has for the last 3 years, that definitely changes things in terms of the upper hierarchy.
All right, and I'm going to like the last question more than you will. We watched the rivalry series between the women's US and Canada, and the US handled them. And I kind of wondered, like, is the gap really that big? And then we get to this first game, and look, I know there are injuries on the Canadian side, and I'll be honest, it almost looked like they were kind of punting that game. Like, we're injured, let's just get through this, and we'll get them when it matters. Where's your confidence level at that this is going to be a competitive game when these teams play? We assume they're going to meet again. How competitive is this going to be? It hasn't been competitive for a while now.
I am Canadian, and I've seen the women's team dominate before. I've seen Poulin be amazing. I've seen Debian be a brick wall. I am worried, but I still believe. I think with Poulin in the lineup, they'll be a lot better. I think with the gold medal on the line, they will take care of business. But it is genuinely worrying how similar that looked to the rivalry series, because I wasn't someone who put a lot of stock into it. We have a model for projections for that tournament, and that's not something I really considered, because it just felt like a tune-up, and it looks like that, and that's unfortunate. A lot of Canadians are complaining that the team they brought wasn't young enough, wasn't skilled enough, it wasn't the best team, and that's a somewhat valid concern. But if you look at like Canada's like under 23 crop of talent, there's a massive gap between them in America. And I think that is the big story, is you are seeing USA's like a golden generation of hockey come together with Murphy and Harvey, and Canada just does not have anyone at the NCAA level playing anywhere close to that level. And they could have brought Chloe Primerano. She wouldn't have, I don't think she would have been ready for a tournament like this, and she would have been nowhere close to someone like Harvey, obviously. That it just doesn't make a difference when USA has like a trifecta of elite, almost like generational players coming up.
The speed was what stood out. It was the speed difference between the sides was drastic. It's going to be interesting. I hope they find a way to like claw their way into that game, and it's a competitive game, because that's the highlight of, I mean, like before we had NHL players, that was like the only highlight of hockey in the Olympics. And now I hope that stands up to what we're getting on the men's side. It's obviously been exciting. Awesome. Well, this has been great. Thanks, Dom. Thanks to former Olympian David Backes for joining us, and producer Jeff Domet, and you at home for watching and listening. Our next show will be Sunday night after the German-US game. I will be on there with Max and hopefully Mark Lazarus, who will be joining us from Italy for that show. Enjoy the Olympics, everybody.